We are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos, Stephanie Pitsirilos-Boquín in the public health world. It is October 10th, 2022, and this is the Zine100 webinar. Now, if you don't know what Zine100 is, don't worry. I'll tell you a little bit. I'll tell you more than a little bit about what it is in a bit. But I'm excited that you're joining us. This is a fabulous project to do with the Kickstarter community. So let's go through some goals for this webinar. What I hope to do is walk you through the zine in detail with some real life examples, and hopefully you can apply some of what you learn here in your own lives and in your work, whether it be if you're a nonprofit or a for-profit, an activist, or just a savvy artist that doesn't want to be taken advantage of when you're taking money from other people. So let's dive into Zine100 and let's start with, what is this zine? So Zine100, How Not to Be Colonized by Outreach Programs, a how-to zine on working with people who offer you stuff. If you're not familiar with what a zine is, it's like a little magazine, a little pamphlet. Sometimes they can be fancy, sometimes they could be do-it-yourself. There are two versions to the zine that we launched on Kickstarter. One is the Andromeda version, which we'll get into that one, and a larger one by the wonderful I Love My Hood collective with Dister Rondon. And the zine in itself is 14 pages, and it comes in two styles. And let's first talk about the Andromeda version. So the Andromeda version of Zine100 is right here. It's approximately 2.5 by 4.5 inches. It's hand folded, spot colored by myself. I zine as Andromeda. And this zine was Xeroxed locally at West Side Stationers, a stationery store in Upper West Side, New York City. And I selected them because I see the great role that they're playing as being an independent store, number one, but also serving a role for our elderly community, people that don't have internet access, the SROs in the neighborhood. They're really a resource for a lot of people. So I was happy to Xerox my zine there. So that's the one version of the Andromeda zine. We also have the collaboration with I Love My Hood. I Love My Hood, for those who don't know, is a collective of worldwide artists, educators, activists that are dedicated to the greater good through hip hop. They've done a number of murals throughout the world, throughout New York City. And I had the good fortune of working with Dister Rondon and collaborating with his style writing graffiti art in the second version. And this one measures about 5 by 8. It's 14 pages, full color, and it's printed by Radix Media, which is a local printer in New York City that is worker owned and union. So we're excited to work with them. And I got additional support in graphic design for the I Love My Hood version by AGMD Studios, Aaron Guzman. So thank you, Aaron, for your wonderful A logo for Zine100, How Not to Be Colonized by Outreach Programs, and your graphic design. So those are and I should give you a little bit about my background. That's the background of the zine itself, the collaborators, I myself as Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos and as Andromeda. My background is in public health. I have over 10, 15 years experience working in public health outreach programs with specifically Latinx, Latino, Latina communities in Upper Manhattan. That's my professional background around healthy living and healthy lifestyles. So spent a lot of time doing outreach programs and working with my public health consulting company, Zoe Health. So I know a little bit about outreach and things that we could do a little bit better. But let's talk about the zine itself. What's Kickstarter for anyone that doesn't know? So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform, and there's lots of fun projects you can find in Kickstarter, from comics to books to tabletop games, pretty much anything. Vacuum cleaners, I'm sure. I decided to crowdfund a public health zine. And you can find a few zines on Kickstarter, but not like a ton of zines, and you're not going to find as many zines as you find comics. So it's exciting to get this project on the platform and to see the enthusiasm that it received. It was launched in February 2022, and 86 backers pledged $2,536 to help bring this project to life, which means that's how much money we raised to actually pay the artists, to have it printed, to get shipping materials, copies, etc., etc. So very proud and very thankful to all you backers who made this come to life. Backers not only backed the zine, they were also paying for buddy copies to be sent out to the community. So a zine for them, but a zine for a community group. And perhaps one of you are one of those community groups that benefited from that buddy zine. We reached, we had backers from 25 US states and also Canada and the Netherlands. Thank you so much. And so let's talk about those buddy copies. So with those backers, where did those buddy copies go? We have people in the healthcare industry receiving Zine100. That includes hospitals, clinics, coalitions based on healthcare. Universities are being sent these buddy copies. Libraries, we have a bar that received a copy. There are museums that receive these copies, environmental advocacy organizations, schools, community activists, community boards, a publisher and writing group received a copy. A number of community and youth centers also received copies, just general collectives and bookstores. So the zine reached not just public health, not just medical, but just a broad audience. And it was so exciting to see all of the groups, specifically a number of marginalized communities that are receiving these, that people felt that they could put them into good use. If you're also not familiar with Kickstarter, not only did they get zines, but people had an opportunity to also purchase add-ons and art. So maybe graffiti's your thing. So if people pledged a certain amount, they would get like an original slap by Aaron Guzman. You had an opportunity to buy other zines for me. Definitely check out crowdfunding and Kickstarter if you're not familiar with. The other nice thing about these zines is that they were sent out with no issue eco-packaging envelopes that allowed people to reuse the envelopes to send them out to their buddy zine partners, or just reuse them in general. And these materials are recyclable, compostable, and all those wonderful things. Do note that receiving a copy of the zine does not imply organizational or individual endorsement of Zine100. So people might have shared the zine with a specific group, but it doesn't necessarily mean that group endorses it. In fact, it might be an act of resistance that zine was sent to that group, hoping that the institution can learn something from it. All right, all of that wonderful stats being said, I think it's time to dig into the zine itself. So if you have your zine, whether it be the Andromeda one or the I Love My Hood, take it out. Let's do a little story time read, dive into it. I'm going to follow the Andromeda one. It has a little bit more text, so it'll help us down the wormhole. So let's set the scene. Like, okay, what's going on? Why am I getting the zine? Why am I here? Why am I in this webinar? Sophia Petrillo from the Golden Girls says, picture it, right? You're offered money. So just picture this situation. You're offered money. Maybe it's a donation from a group, an individual, or maybe you applied for a grant or for an award, or maybe you're offered programming or staff. What does that mean? So in a lot of public health programs, you might not be given money from a partner group. Let's say it's a university or hospital, but they say, we have this staff, we want attached to your group and help you implement XYZ. So it's kind of like money, but not being money. All right, there's that scenario. Or you're offered a particular product that they say, hey, we're not giving you money, but you want to use our product. This will help you out, right? Or a sponsorship of some sort. Maybe it's not money. Maybe they're like, we'll pay for all your uniforms. Like, think through those things. Like, why should you be thinking of all those situations? Because who doesn't want money? Maybe you're that rare case that doesn't want money. Maybe you're fine, and then you say no thank you, and you don't need to be thinking about Zine100. But for a lot of groups, everything's run on grants, or you got to find some way to pay your staff. So you're going to listen. You want to hear that someone's offered you a pot of gold, right? You want to just take it. The first thing you want to do is not question them, but question yourself. What will this money do, right? You think of all the wonderful things, and this is the page I'm on in the zine. You think of all the problems it could solve, right? People say money solves problems. Well, they say it also creates problems. But let's say they're like, wait a minute, this money will help pay staff salaries. Maybe this money can help pay for supplies. Maybe it's going to sponsor a program that you offer your community. Maybe this money can actually better health outcomes or lives of your constituents. Maybe you want to take this money because it makes you look good. You want your highball, or you want to, be networked and say, look at all this money I have. Whatever your reason is for why you might take the money, think about, do they already know this? Do they already know that you need this money? This is important because you want to be asking, why are they offering you this money? And it's a good time to remind you, if you don't have your $1 million wish list yet, make it. You never know who's going to knock on your door and all of a sudden say, here's your $1 million or your $1,000 or your $500. How could you use this? How could you put it to use? How can I help you out? Or all of a sudden you find out last minute of this grant that you want to apply for. It's good to have this list in case a pot of gold actually does wind up being offered to you. So that's setting the scene. But what's next? Do you just take the pot of gold? Well, the first thing Zine100 says is don't listen to Vader, right? Just don't say it's your destiny. You want to first ask and or read the fine print. And one of the most important things to do, besides knowing yourself and your own group's needs and goals, are what are their goals? What does this mean? Well, it could be research, particularly if we're talking about health. They want data, they want publications, they want awards, they want fuel to apply for more grants and peacock to other donors, right? It could be all of these things. But it's important for you to understand this. Maybe they're a middleman for Lex Luthor or some other rich guy, cause, or company that you may not want to be associated with. It's important to know, is it a cover for another group that, you find out, oh my goodness, this is not cool. It's not compatible with our mission statement. Or maybe it is, but you want to make sure it's not a middleman to middle person to something else that you're not cool with. Maybe they truly want to improve lives, right? There are always those with good intentions. And maybe most of them really believe that they want to improve your lives. We'll get back to good intentions, but it could be possible that that's simply it. Not enough, but it could be it. Maybe they're looking to gentrify the neighborhood. What are you talking about? Well, particularly if you're in an area that is vulnerable to gentrification or is currently undergoing gentrification, or maybe one day might be prime for gentrification. Being offered things is actually a first step of the savvy, whether it be a university or a real estate developer, and establishing relationships early with local community groups so that when they do roll in and there's outrage, you're going to be a little bit muffled and might not say anything because you accepted money. So just think that could be one of their reasons. And maybe they want to just offer you money because it's good PR for them, right? They just want to look good. So let's get into some case studies on what goals are and how that can play into whether or not you might not want to take this pot of gold, or if you do, what it might prevent you from doing. So 2 examples I'm going to use. I'll start with, what do beer and piraguas and frio frios have in common? So for those of you that who don't know what a piragua or frio frio is, those are those shaved ices you see sometimes, particularly in New York City, or maybe you live in the Caribbean, you see it in the Caribbean. You see sellers in the street shaving some ice, right? And then they put it in a cup, and then they add flavored syrup to it. And I'm going to just show you my face for this part. And now that I showed you my face, I'm going to go back to the picture. So if you see, they add to these piraguas, they add flavors, and these are the bottles right here. And you can select what flavor you want. So set the scene for walking around a neighborhood, and one of us in Zoe Health noticing an advertisement for beer. It was a beer company. And we didn't realize it was an advertisement for beer until we saw it was a picture of a piragua seller, and he was shaving ice in this mural. And if you looked closely, you didn't have to look too closely, it was obvious. All the flavors were the flavor of the beer. It was the beer branded instead of the corn syrup, instead of the sugar. And it sounds, I mean, it's a genius marketing, if you ask me, in principle, but not the public health aspect of it. Because piraguas and frio frio are also sold to kids. And it's cool for an adult to have a beer frio frio, but it's not cool to market beer when to an audience that also is piraguas are youthful. So when we brought this up to the local hospital that this was going on, the response was, I agree with you. And I should say it was a program that was dedicated to preventing underage drinking. And the response to this was, I agree with you, but my funding comes from that beer company. I can't really say anything, or I might lose my funding. Now, what better way, if you're a beer company, than to give money, a pot of gold, to a group, and then when you do things in that neighborhood, you know that group might not be able to say anything or feel that they can't, because then they'll lose that funding. So there goes the underage drinking campaign. It was the most direct and obvious example that I had personal involvement, that I was astonished and saddened to see. But it's exactly what I mean when you take money, there's strings attached. And I think we all know this, but it plays out in different ways. It plays out in very sad ways in the health field. So that's my piragua and frio frio and beer example. Another example is, what does soda and soccer have in common? Many moons ago, I did a conference in Washington, D.C., and it was around childhood obesity, and I was going through best practices, and one of the best practices is to drink more water instead of soda and juice. And I was saying to this group, and these were mostly youth sports groups, leaders in the audience, is to hand out these healthy habit sheets that include the simple thing of drink more water instead of soda and juice. And nothing came up during the panel, but it was after, when I was pulled aside, and a number of soccer leagues said to me, I really like what you're saying, and I really like these materials, but we're sponsored by insert major soda company, and I can't hand these out because they're the ones that sponsor our uniforms. And again, it's a sad example of, when you take money, you might think you're obligated then on what you should and shouldn't do because of the money you took, or maybe you are. And in the end, it was the youth that hurts from this. It censored scientific, valid health recommendations. And it's exactly what I'm talking about when I say, before you get that pot of gold, question what their goals are and have these conversations about, fine, big soda company. But if I take this money, you understand I'm going to be handing out material that will say this is not the healthier choice. These are things you have to think about before you take the pot of gold. But in the case of those soccer teams, they did not hand them out because they were afraid of losing their sponsorship. All right, so those are goals. Goals are very important. Now, the other thing you should be asking is staffing and programming. So we are on this page, the staffing and programming, page 5 and 6 of the zine. The thing with staffing is if you're accepting either staff from a group that's inserting their own staff in, or they are having a say in hiring staff, you want to make sure that those people are culturally knowledgeable of who's in your community. You know, what's the makeup of your community. Do the people speak your language? Are they going to pay for translations that are specific not only to your language but region, right? Particularly in Spanish. Spanish is spoken differently in different countries. So no Google Translate. Making sure that you actually have accurate translators. Is this a local group? Do they know you guys? Do they know you folks? Do they have any idea who you're about? Will they allow you to hire locally? You know, or do they have what I call degree fever, meaning they're just looking for the same old with the XYZ degrees, when actually it might not be degrees that are needed to help your community work, but people that actually have relevant experience and skills and that are rooted to local economies. Shows desire to be there. This is very important. If you're bringing in staff from outside, or even if it's the case of local, but a lot of times bringing staff from outside, do they actually want to be there? Do they want to be working with your people? I'm not saying everybody loves their job, but do they show amount of respect and professionalism in working with you? Particularly in medicine and with doctors. Do they actually want to be working with you marginalized communities, with communities in poverty? I'm not saying you're going to get an answer, but you're certainly going to be able to see through whether they truly care or don't. And sometimes it's just a matter of calling it out from the beginning and saying, listen, maybe this ain't Park Avenue, but we want to make sure that you know it's not Park Avenue and all of us are treated with respect. These are the little things that do come out in programming that make a big difference. Jumping now to model design, we are on page 7 and 8. Is your approach asset-based? So this is the Ray Barretto page. Program design is super important. The best model for you is an asset-based model, which simply means that you are viewed from the perspective of your strengths and not a prism of challenges. This helps avoid the savior complex. And that the program is built upon those strengths. So not simply seeing you as this destitute community, this nobody cares about, oh my gosh, you need saving. It means asking and examining, are your cultural strengths and traditions and different ways of life valued and incorporated? Is this group investing in local economies and working to make small businesses and vendors partners? It is one thing to say, well, sure, you know, we want to improve this neighborhood, but then you do nothing to support the local businesses that might make this a sustainable XYZ movement, health change you're wanting to do, to just order from them once and not help them get through the red paperwork to make them regular vendors of your big institution. The big question Do they copyright your soul? And what do I mean by that? So this question, do they copyright your soul, is actually what helped make Zine100 even come to be. So when running a public health project, I actually, and this is how I met I Love My Hood, tried to work with I Love My Hood in a campaign. And when they got the contract from the hospital that I was employed with, the contract laid out that they owned everything. The video of them doing the artwork, everything. And I never forgot when I Love My Hood declined to work with me in the hospital because of that and said, no way, this is copywriting everything I do. And you see this in Hollywood, when the Kung Fu martial arts star was asked to be in a movie, and the big movie company asked to copyright all of his movements so that they could replicate it, maybe in animation. And he declined. That's who he was. Why would he give that away? So that stuck with me. The no, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even pay attention to that fine print. I Love My Hood did. And it makes me particularly happy to be working with them on this zine because it was a big public health lesson for me. So make sure you're asking yourself, in that fine print, what are they going to own? How inclusive are they? And are they using underutilized sectors of society? Meaning, are they inviting the same old community partners onto the table in whatever it is that they're doing? If they are, that's probably because they are the same old partners and they know they're going to say yes, and they know they're less likely to push back. Try to look for different sectors of society. Artists are amazing. They bring new things to the table. They have amazing skills. Just make sure whoever's at the table, you bring to the table as well. Does their outreach have a middle class bias? What does that mean? Meaning, are materials that they're developing for you, for example, saying things like, well, you should all eat in the dining room as a family, and make sure everybody has their own bedroom and is sleeping in their own beds. That's not the reality for some people, right? Live in New York City, not many apartments have a dining room. Make sure that that middle class bias is not present in your outreach materials, that your outreach materials, your publications include the different ways of lives and housing situations of your constituents. A middle class bias implies everyone has access to a laptop at home to be doing these things. Everybody should be okay with using their personal cell phone for doing work calls. Nope. Or is what they're offering a savior narrative that they are living and inviting you into? You guys you need saving. There's something wrong with you. I included the famous Ray Barretto. If you guys don't know the reference in the zine, this is the Fania vinyl record cover with Ray Barretto instead of who you might think is Clark Kent and Superman. I'm trying to remember why I have a Soylent Green movie reference here on my webinar. I am thinking that I'm saying if they're looking at your local food with those eyes, that what you're eating is Soylent Green, make sure your outreach materials are reflective, not of their, oh my God, like, I don't know what you're eating, but actually what your native foods are. I think that's funny that I have that there. Okay, moving now to sustainability and credit. This is the and then what? What happens after you get that money and the program's rolled out or whatever? This is what I call they came, they saw, they published. And that's it. See ya, riding off into the sunset. So thank you, Patrick Lugo, for this artwork. He did the postcards for the Zine100 for this page. It has the little tips in the back in case you guys needed some pointers at the end. Let's dive into that because we don't want they came, they saw, they published. What does this mean? So this art here is actually art from the I Love My Hood. This is art from Dister with the Conquistador. So you want to be looking out for your program. The question you're asking is, what are the long-term plans beyond the grant, right? What happens after that the money ends? Have you set a sustainable model up, or is it just see you later, total abandonment? The other thing you want to look out for is yourself and your staff. Do they pay for professional development opportunities along the course of the program or the course of you having these monies? Will they credit field staff and community leaders in publications? You don't want to be someone's resume builder. At least make it a two-way street. Do you get enough out of this? Which is the bottom line. Do you get enough out of this? So examples to that, if they're giving you money for after school programs and the grant ends, all of a sudden there's no after school program for your kids, end of story. So have you spent some time before the grant ends in them saying, well, this is how you can fund this going forward in the future, or they helped you find new partners to work with. When you're thinking about yourself, think of conventions or online workshops that interest you. Don't wait for them to find them for you. You look for them, tie it into the program, and ask for the grantee to sponsor you and say, this is what would be great for my professional development. Because guess what? They're doing it for their own staff. And while they're working with you, you might not technically be their staff, but your partners. Doesn't hurt to ask. Sustainability. All right, so now we're going to the reality check. Should you just say thank you? It is possible to be thankful and not treat the money as an unquestioned gift from the gods. That's my most important thing I have to say about this, is that it is possible to be thankful and not treat the money as an unquestioned gift for the gods. Because this came up when I was crowdfunding Zine100, and I was interviewed by a lawyer on the radio who was playing devil's advocate. You should just be grateful. No, you could be grateful and still ask questions. Look around. Are there others getting more things from the same deal? I use this example in community board meetings around groups that are so happy. They've been pushing for a new playground in their neighborhood, and they accept just the bare minimum because they're so grateful to just get a playground, and they don't ask for a public bathroom in these playgrounds because they just want to be grateful. They want to ask too much. Meanwhile, in the more affluent neighborhoods, these playgrounds are definitely asked to come with public restrooms. I'm giving live examples, real life examples that I've seen play out. Make sure you ask for enough. Make sure you look around and see what other groups have gotten from that same group. Don't shortchange yourself. Most often, you can shape these programs, particularly if you see buzzwords like community-based or community participatory in their writing. If it says community participatory, they should have been having these conversations with you way before saying we got this grant. Way before. So it's good to have these conversations with those sitting on pots of gold before they even ask you, and you say, hey, just so you know, we're here and these are the things that interest us, that concern us and our constituents. If you ever find a pot of gold and want to work with us being the experts in our community. Beware Trojan horses. Okay, so the big one here is, and there's no real solution or easy answer. There is a solution, but not an easy solution. A lot of times these community neighborhood improvement programs are Trojan horses for gentrification. And I've certainly worked with communities that say it's fine and dandy what you're doing, but it's gonna, if you make our streets look nicer, the landlords are gonna raise the rents. Like, I'd rather have bad streets looking streets. Not everyone feels this way, but it is something that was expressed. I'd rather have streets that aren't that pretty, if it means me no longer being able to afford my home. So if you're doing things that you think are like honey to gentrification, partner with local politicians on protecting affordable housing. If this is a project that does include any type of real estate development, make sure affordable housing is in that mix. Just be aware that that's sometimes a Trojan horse. Specifically, as I said, sometimes groups reach out to developers and universities that own a lot of land, reach out to community groups ahead of time to start showing how much they care about community. And then a few years down the road, this big project is announced that we're actually looking to do XYZ, and all of a sudden people are displaced. So beware of Trojan horses and push hard for affordable housing. That was the reality check. Well, where can I find Zine100? So I want to, before we even get to that part, remind you of the last page. Whether you are tenant associations, whether you are businesses, whether you're individuals, nonprofit, apply some heart, wisdom, local knowledge, and some rooster feathers to your community partnerships. You can accept a pot of gold and also be smart about it and make sure that gold works for you in ways that you want them to work out for you. So I'm going to end with watch out for wormholes and Rigilians. For those of you not into comic books, the Rigilians are a species that colonize space. Watch out for them when you're taking pots of gold. If you want more information on Zine100 and how to purchase additional copies of Zine100, you can visit zoehealth.us's website /zine, ZINE 100. You could shoot an email to andromedazines@gmail.com. My name is Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos, or Stephanie Pitsirilos-Boquín in the public health world. You could visit my author website, Stephanie Nina Pitsirilos. On Twitter, I'm Zoe, ZOE Health. Instagram, The Nina Galaxy. You can also reach the I Love My Hood collective in Dister Rondon at ilovemyhood.com. Instagram at I Love My Hood. I really want to thank all backers of Zine100 for believing in this project, for sending out your buddy copies to the community. I hope this webinar has been useful. I hope the zine's useful. We might have a few community copies available for free. More importantly, visit our website. If you can't afford the zine, you can purchase copies for your organization. Thank you so much, and take care.